So, hi, Olive.
Hello, Sara.
How
Lovely
are
to
you?
see you online.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Yeah,
Good. Yeah.
all good.
So, we were talking a little while ago before all of this kind of erupted, and we're in the situation we are about breathing, which sounds like a very simple thing, but it's about breathing properly. So, thank you for doing this section on breathing for health.
Yes, I just back up a bit. So last year I got into this because I was fascinated by the fact that I discovered that nose breathing was so important, in particular for the kids that we work with who have learning differences. And so I got into it for that reason, but it was also for myself because I have been a mouth breather for decades, and I have several health issues that relate to that, I now know. And so I stumbled across this guy called Patrick McGowan, and who is Irish, by the way, and who is, and I started spreading the word, if you like, about how you breathe and how it affects your learning. And in particular, let me just put an ad in here, is that they reckon that 70 to 80% of kids with ADHD are mouth breathers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And nobody's telling the parents or the schools. And the result is that they get very shallow breathing in the top of their chest, which puts them into fight and flight, and then they go into hyperactivity. And so if you've got a hyperactive kid, please listen to the end of this, because you will, in a few minutes, you'll be able to learn skills that could be very useful to you and to your child.
And particular at this time when everybody is stuck indoors.
Exactly.
And really essential, I think, for parents to know this about their children if they're struggling with that in particular.
The extraordinary thing I found was that when you talk about breathing and you're talking about breathing through your nose, one of the important things is to keep carbon dioxide in your bloodstream to enable your cells to oxygenate, which means it takes the oxygen from the blood cells, from the blood veins and arteries into the cells of your body. So it affects your cells, your tendons, your muscles, your organs, and your brain. And the really counterintuitive thing I discovered was that if a child is short of oxygenation in their brain, they will go hyper. Right. And assumed it would have been the opposite, but it's not, apparently, according to those people that know all these stuff. And so I got really fascinated by this, and for the last 9 months I've been working on me, and I've been trying to tell as many people as possible that the way to breathe is through your nose, because that's what your nose is designed to do. And your breathing through your mouth is just an emergency.
Okay, so just explain that bit about breathing through the mouth as an emergency. What does that mean?
Well, I'll tell you the other way around if I can. I'll just tell you about breathing through your nose. If you breathe through your nose, then firstly air gets cleaned, then it gets hydrated, and then it gets what have I missed out? Oh, warmed up before it reaches your lungs. But much more important, that nitric oxide gets added to your breath. It's because nitric oxide is generated in the plumbing at the back of your nasal passages. I won't go into the details of that, but basically it gets generated. And originally when they found out about this, which I have to say attracted the Nobel Prize for something or other like science back in 1998, the first thing was that nitric oxide would sort of lubricate your bronchial tubes, so air flowed better through your bronchial tubes. And so that was the first thing, and of course that affected asthmatics and heart problems and all sorts of different health problems. And so that was fascinating. And then but then they found also that nitric oxide is will sort of clean dust mites, for example. And then they went on to viruses and all sorts of other things, that your nitric oxide in the back of your nasal passages basically is the cleaning department for air coming in through your nose, which is absolutely fascinating in the arena to which we belong now.
Absolutely.
And so the more you can breathe through your nose, the better. And of course, if you don't breathe through your nose, you breathe through your mouth, and you miss all that lot. Doesn't get hydrated, warmed up, doesn't get nitric oxide added, and doesn't get cleaned. Your mouth is for eating and speaking, and it is not for breathing. So if you can just remember that as a starter, that's what's really important. And the next thing is that you need to breathe in through your nose and out through your nose.
I was going to ask about, so if you, because I know we've done some sort of balanced breathing in the past, where the breath comes in through the nose and out through the mouth, and it's only for a limited amount of time. Is that okay to still do that, or is it better to do it all through the nose?
Time, but if you don't keep enough carbon dioxide running around your body, then you don't get enough oxygenation going. And I'll give you a couple of examples. If you get a kid who's really hyper, when they stand up, are they wobbly? And quite often they are, and it's because they haven't got enough oxygenation in their legs.
Wow.
And if you, let's take, you know what it's like when you blow up balloons? You're putting all your carbon dioxide into that balloon, and then what happens is you go a bit woo-woo-y, whatever the description of that is.
Yeah, a bit dizzy, yeah.
A bit dizzy and wobbly, and that's because you've got lack of oxygenation in your brain. So that's why you breathe out through your nose as well as breathing in through your nose. Now, most people, I mean, there is a huge percentage of people who are mouth breathers. I have to say, I was watching all of our three that have just been identified with COVID-19, all of our, the Prime Minister, the health man and the chief medical officer talking, and I just looked them up on the internet. They're all mouth breathing. So that what they're not doing is getting all that cleaning going on, basically. And there is a lot more to this that you can find out. But
well, we're going to put there'll be some links underneath this video. So
well, the best thing to do is to link onto my latest blog, which is brand new this morning, because I was talking.
Yeah, there'll be a link underneath the video. We'll stick that on.
Yeah, I was talking to Patrick McGowan last night on Facebook, and because he was the one that got me started on ADHD, basically. And a couple of weeks ago, I wrote to him and said, "You must know something about COVID-19. Please tell me." And he's now put a blog up. And so,
wow, okay. What's his opinion?
Well, that's, please could we nose breathe? That's his opinion. And there is loads of research about different aspects of this. Of course, there's not research for COVID-19, but there is research for previous coronaviruses like SARS. And so there is a lot of information that underpins this.
So I just like to be clear, though, that it doesn't mean that if you're only nose breathing that you're completely safe when you're out there. It just means that you are probably slightly better protected. And I think I said this too the other day. I was walking around the supermarket, and instinctively I did not want to open my mouth.
Yeah.
I had this instinct of just don't breathe through your mouth. Just, obviously you've got to breathe, but I felt much safer actually breathing through my nose and really, being very, very conscious of not having, not breathing through my mouth. Yeah.
And so there is a lot of background to it, but what I'd like to say to people is what they can do right now, basically. That doesn't cost them anything. And I just put this out on my blog this morning. But so first thing is learn to keep your mouth shut. You know, your husband might say it's the best thing that's ever happened to you. Mine did the first time I did it. And so, and what you want to do is also is to start slowing down your breathing. So you don't want to be breathing a great big, you don't want your shoulders going up, and you don't want breathing into the top of your chest. You want to be breathing right down into your belly. And when I first started this, I found it really difficult to breathe right down into my belly. It does need practice, but the more you do it, the better it gets.
And do you have any tips to help people to kind of do that belly breathing? Is there anything they can visualize or imagine? Or
one of my tips is to lay on the floor with 3 small books on top of you, one on your chest, one on your belly, and one at sort of the top of your trousers or skirt, and just notice which ones are moving to start with. And then once you've worked that out, what you want to do is get the bottom 2 moving, at least the middle one, and preferably the bottom one as well, because once the bottom one is moving, that means your diaphragm is moving. So it's moving up and down here, and that's got all sorts of benefits as well.
I do know, just from working with lots of people over the years, and particularly young people, children and teens, is I do notice that some people do find it incredibly difficult to breathe without moving their shoulders.
Yeah.
And it's like there's such an effort to try and bring a breath in. And I do know from talking to other physical therapists that sometimes it can be the intercostal muscles in the diaphragm have got stuck because they're not been breathing properly,
not being used,
and actually that in and of itself can also trigger anxiety as well, because if the diaphragm's not moving properly, then it sets up that whole
if you're breathing, you think of your lung as being like a pear shaped.
Sorry, Olive, sorry, I have a little interruption. Hang on. Sorry.
Your lungs are pear shaped, and so if you're breathing into the top part, you're not breathing into much of your lungs because it's only narrow at the top. Whereas if you manage to breathe right down into the bottom, you're getting better use of the air. Patrick was talking about it on his video as the dead space. He said if you're not using it, it's just dead, and you're not getting any benefit from it. And so what you want to do is breathe right down, and if you can breathe right down, you won't see your chest moving, you won't see your shoulders moving. So that's the first thing. And also it's one of the most difficult things I found was to talk and nose breathe.
Yeah. So what do you do around
somebody gave a really good tip about that. They said the first thing, try reading aloud. Now if you leave gaps to nose breathe, like I just have, you get the opportunity for somebody to digest what you're saying, to process what you're saying, which is really useful. And you can have a gap where you can nose breathe. If you've got a Pilates teacher or yoga teacher, you'll probably find they can do it without even stopping. They can nose breathe at the same time as they're talking. Mine certainly can.
Okay.
But it does take time to practice that one.
So what are some simple things that people can be doing to get into this habit? I mean, I suppose one of the questions that's in my mind is about what about when you're asleep?
Well, yes. I decided I had to do this when I was asleep, right? Yeah, when I first started, and I was really anti this. And one of the simplest ways is to put a bit of tape across your mouth.
Wow. Okay.
And I did it walking around the house to start with, and it was pretty uncomfortable. And but I did it. And Patrick's now got a few gadgets, if you like, to make life easier, especially for kids. Don't tape the mouth shut of a kid. There is actually a special thing they've designed.
Really? Are you sure? Because I just got interrupted by one of mine, and I know I paused the video. I said there'd be no editing, but I had a feeling there was obviously ructions going on. So I was not going to risk having that come in here. But yeah, I think I'm sure there are many people watching thinking,
but
really?
that
would be great.
He's developed a brilliant gadget. I can't remember the name of it, but it's on his video. To make sure it just presses your lips together without stopping you talking. if you follow me.
Okay.
So at night, when you're asleep and relaxed, it will just gently press them together, but you can still yell out, or without a problem.
Okay. So what about, I'm just thinking of my own older son. He has braces. I know for a fact he is a mouth breather. He finds it very, very hard to actually keep his mouth closed because of his braces.
I think
he had adenoids out, his tonsils out, he had all kinds of things when he was younger. So he really is out of the practice and the habit. And trying to tell a teen to do anything is pretty challenging.
Yeah.
So any tips there?
Well, there is a cartoon book about Bitiku breathing, which is quite useful, which I think you can even download. I would suggest if you're going to use anything, the big mouth breather that Patrick's developed is a much better plan. As I say, it doesn't stop you breathe. It doesn't stop you opening your mouth. It stops you breathing out air, which is the object of it. And with braces, I really haven't got a clue, but I think you could go to Patrick and ask him.
Okay.
But the other thing is you want to notice how bigger breaths you're taking. You want smaller breaths, and this is for lung health, regardless of COVID-19. You want smaller breaths. So in point of fact that you can hardly notice people breathing. People shouldn't be gasping for air. They have enough, unless they're really sick. You know those things that they put on your finger when you go into hospital?
Measure your oxygen levels.
Yeah, if you've got a decent oxygen level, it's like 95% or up, I think. And that's what most people have got, unless you've got something dire wrong with you, in which case that's a different problem. But you can check your oxygen levels. Now, if you've got a high enough oxygen level, you don't need more oxygen from mouth breathing. Gentle nose breathing is enough.
So is that what mouth breathing does? It brings in more oxygen?
It's what people think they need is more oxygen, but actually what they need is gentler breathing and retaining more carbon dioxide. Now I've got to talk about nitric oxide, because there is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is generated in the nasal passages, and then there are some ways of improving the amount of nitric oxide you've got, which will be very useful with COVID-19, because the more you can deluge your air with nitric oxide, the better. We have no idea, I don't think yet, how much you need and how good it is for you, but it seems very logical, and they have done some work with SARS. So there's two things. One, you can hum. Now, if you try humming a moment, just try humming.
Well, I'll do Happy Birthday, because that's what we're supposed to sing when we're washing our hands. So,
and notice what's happening in your nose. Carry on. Did you notice any difference?
It felt clearer. I don't know. that's how.
You quite often get a bit of a tingling feeling in the back of your nose, which is related to nitric oxide being generated. There is another one, I've just forgotten it for a moment. Oh, of course, if you do yoga, then quite often they'll talk about humming, or they'll talk about chanting, and it's all the same thing. It's generating more nitric oxide. And the other thing about it is that if you have you want high percentage of nitric oxide. So if you have smaller breaths, you'll get a higher percentage. Okay.
So are there any particular exercises that you can just take me through and to give people?
I think the best thing on those is probably to go onto my blog, which has got the links to Patrick's video, and get the man himself to do those. And there was another couple of things I just wanted to mention. He is talking about how to look after your breathing so you potentially don't catch it, which everybody would like. And the second thing is, if you have got it, what you do then.
Okay.
Because he's got breathing exercises for them. And again, it's if you've got a restriction in your lungs, you tend to want to breathe with your mouth open and breathe deeper. And that is actually the wrong thing to do. And he explains it perfectly. And so
wow, okay. That's really, really fascinating, because it is, as you said right at the beginning, you know, there's kind of a counterintuitive element to this, that we think actually breathing through our mouths is what we need, and it is actually the complete opposite.
Exactly. There is another one, I don't know if you've seen the notes going around about viral load. That is because they're talking about viral load because a lot of people firstly, people can be asymptomatic and still test positive. And I suspect that's because they're doing nose swabs. So they've got COVID-19 in their nose, but they're not actually got any symptoms because the nitric oxide has killed it off. But the problem is, if you get enough of it, then it's what's called a viral load, is that it's got a lot of the virus there. So it's going to be overwhelming, the nitric oxide. And of course, what happens if you go in through your mouth, you're going to get buckets of it. If you're in an environment where there's a lot of COVID-19 flying around, and we all know it flies around 2 meters away from, you know, it's powerful stuff. And so breathing through your mouth, you're going to get a much bigger viral load. You've got more air coming in, so you've got more droplets coming in.
And nothing to kill it.
And nothing to kill it. Exactly. Now, there's also, just for interest, there is a device, and I think there's several, but there's definitely one I heard about the other day, which would have been approved for COVID-19 treatment in the States at breakneck speed through the FDA, which mixes, I don't know what the technology of it is, but basically it mixes oxygen with nitric oxide.
Wow, okay. And we produce that ourselves, so this is...
Exactly, but we can do. How much we've got is another matter. I don't know that anybody's got into measuring how much we've got. Actually, that's not true. Patrick said on his video, he said, I think it's between 5 and 200 parts per million or something like that, if you're just like you are at the moment, breathing through your nose. Mm-hmm. But if you hum, you can increase that to about 3,000. So it's quite a lot more. What? And I want to go back to talking about...
That's just completely blown my mind. So what does humming actually do? I'm really
the stuff, which I don't know the details of, that's in the back of your nose that generates nitric oxide. It's
okay,
sort of...
I'm going to be annoying everybody in my house. We're all going to be annoying each other with our humming.
And the other thing I wanted to say was, about kids who had their adenoids out, and this is probably more to do with ADHD than this, but I'll say it differently. One of the problems is people say, I can't breathe through my nose. Now, that might be adenoids, that might be all sorts of medical conditions, but one of the things that people are not being told is that if you have your adenoids out, then you must learn to breathe through your nose again, because otherwise it's going to gunge up again, basically. And I think every physio should be, when a child is in hospital having their adenoids out, they ought to have a half-hour's training session from a physio to get them to breathe again.
We certainly didn't have any kind of information about this one.
I think what happened to me was, I've been a mouth breather for decades, and I think what happened to me was I had a cesarean, and then I had peritonitis. So I had huge scarring across my belly. And with both of those operations, I remember taking 6 weeks, 8 weeks to get over the pain in my belly, you know, and the last thing I'd have wanted to do was try and breathe down into the bottom of my belly. And of course, after 8 weeks, you've completely got a new habit of mouth breathing.
Well, I was going to ask you, how long do you think it generally takes to develop a new habit of nose breathing?
Well, for me, but then I have been doing it for decades, mouth breathing. I mean, I'm getting better all the time, but I have noticed so many symptoms that are disappearing. That, for example, I had a lot of foot problems, and I think that was lack of oxygenation in my feet. I'd wake up in the morning feeling as if I was on another planet, whereas now with mouth taping, I have to say, and I'm still doing it because I love it, I wake up in the morning feeling bright and alive.
Wow, that's amazing.
So why wouldn't you do it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Olive, this has been really, truly fascinating, and could genuinely save lives if people can learn to nose breathe.
And I think the thing about it is it won't do any harm.
No.
It doesn't cost you anything, so it's got two good things going for it. And as I say, do go through Patrick's words, and do go on his video.
But the link, all the links will be below this video, so people can find your blog, and anything else that
it's
you think is relevant.
To the most recent blog on olivehickmott.co.uk, and just absorb the information from him. He's a truly remarkable guy. I mean, there is lots of other people into this type of breathing, but I just found he helped me get started with ADHD, and it's always been it's payback, if you like, that I want him to get as many people into this. But how, I'd love to know from anybody if they want to post on here, how do we get the health system to take some notice? Because just watch people on television who are being interviewed, notice whether they're mouth breathers or nose breathers. You can tell.
And I'm sure as people are watching this, they're becoming aware themselves. I know I'm very, very conscious of breathing through my nose as I'm talking to you.
When I found out about it, I sat in an armchair for 2 hours and nose breathed the whole time. And I was so relaxed by the end of it, because it puts you straight.
That's even better, isn't it? With so much stress and people worrying as well. If they're watching TV, if they're working, if they're not actually talking, so their mouth doesn't need to be open, then obviously this is a really great opportunity to practice it, and just to bring their awareness to it as much as they can.
You were saying start with the kids, and I think one of the things you can do is get the kids, when they're watching the TV, shut their mouths, because they don't need to talk.
Sounds good to me. Olive, thank you so much for that. Really, really interesting, really informative. And as always, an absolute pleasure to talk to you. So you look after yourself, and you stay safe.